She was abandoned by her rich husband at the altar, but the gardener proposed to her. Sophia Bennet never imagined that the most important day of her life would turn into the worst nightmare she could ever experience. There she was, dressed in the most beautiful wedding dress money could buy, surrounded by 100 guests at the family's lavish mansion in Aspen, when her entire life crumbled in a matter of seconds. It was exactly at the moment the priest asked if anyone had objections to the marriage that Brandon Hartwell, her millionaire fiancé, simply turned his back and walked toward the garden exit, leaving behind a deadly silence that cut through the air like a blade. Sophia sat paralyzed in her wheelchair, feeling the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on her, while murmurs of shock and embarrassment began to spread among the guests. The sound of Brandon's footsteps fading away along the garden's stone path echoed like war drums in Sophia's heart. She clenched her hands in her lap, trying to control the tremor that took over her entire body. The white flowers decorating the altar seemed to mock her at that moment, as if all the beauty around her was just a cruel illusion. It was then that she felt a presence approaching. She lifted her tear-filled eyes and saw Nathan Hayes, the estate's gardener, walking slowly toward her. He wore his green work shirt, completely out of place among the elegant guests, but his brown eyes conveyed a genuine compassion she had never seen before. Nathan knelt before Sophia's wheelchair, completely ignoring the indignant whispers that began to intensify around them. In his calloused hands, he held a single red rose, one of the flowers he himself had cultivated in the mansion's garden. "Mrs. Sophia," he said in a soft voice, but firm enough for everyone to hear. "You didn't deserve this. No woman deserves to be humiliated like this." Sophia stared at him with a mixture of surprise and confusion. Nathan had always been respectful and discreet during the 2 years he had worked on the estate, limiting himself to greeting her politely when their paths crossed in the gardens. It had never occurred to her that he might have deeper feelings. "Nathan, what are you doing?" she murmured, her voice almost inaudible from the shock. "I'm doing what that man should have done a long time ago," he replied, extending the red rose toward her. "I'm treating you with the respect and love you deserve." The guests began to stir visibly. Some of Sophia's high society friends exchanged scandalized looks, while the businessmen whispered among themselves with expressions of disapproval. The contrast between Nathan's simplicity and the elegance of the setting could not have been more stark. Patricia Bennet, Sophia's mother, quickly approached with her face red from indignation. At 62, she was a woman who had always valued appearances and social conventions above all else. "What is this insolence?" she exclaimed, her sharp voice echoing through the garden. "How dare you approach my daughter at a time like this?" "Mrs. Patricia," replied Nathan, slowly rising but keeping the rose extended toward Sophia. "With all due respect, someone needs to be by your daughter's side right now, and it's clearly not going to be the man who just abandoned her." The tension in the air was palpable. The guests formed a semicircle around the scene, some discreetly filming with their cell phones, others simply watching with a mixture of morbid curiosity and embarrassment. Sophia felt as if she were being judged by an invisible court. Richard Bennet, father of Sophia and owner of one of the largest construction companies in upstate New York, stepped forward with clenched fists. His 70 years did nothing to diminish his intimidating presence. "You're fired," he said in a deep, threatening voice. "Leave my property immediately or I will call security." "Dad, no," whispered Sophia, finding her voice for the first time since Brandon had left. Something in Nathan's gesture had touched a deep part of her wounded soul. "Sophia, you can't be serious," interjected Patricia, kneeling beside her daughter's wheelchair. "This man is an employee. He has no education, no social standing. What will society say?" "Society is already talking, Mother," replied Sophia, her voice gradually gaining strength. "They're talking about how I was left at the altar by the man I swore to love. At least this man had the courage to stay." Nathan still held the rose, patiently waiting for her to accept it. His eyes never left Sophia's face, as if the rest of the world had disappeared around them. "Mrs. Sophia," he said softly, "I know I have no right to say this, but I need you to know. I've worked here for 2 years, and every day I see you, my heart fills with admiration." Not for your outer beauty, which is undeniable, but for the strength I see in your eyes, for the kindness with which you treat all of us who work here." Nathan's words caused an absolute silence. Even the murmurs of the guests ceased, as if everyone were hypnotized by the raw sincerity of his words. "You don't know me," replied Sophia, fighting the tears that threatened to overflow again. "I know you more than you think," said Nathan, with a sad smile. "I know the woman who always stops to ask about my family when she sees me working. The woman who insisted I be promoted when she learned I have trouble reading. The woman who secretly sent food baskets to my mother when she fell ill last year." Sophia was speechless. She had asked for total discretion when helping Nathan's family, never imagining he would find out. "How did you—" she began. "My mother told me," explained Nathan. "She said an angel had appeared in her life at the most difficult time, and I knew immediately it could only have been you." Patricia stood up abruptly, clearly disturbed by the revelation that her daughter had secretly helped an employee's family. "Sophia, we can't stand here listening to this," she said in a tense voice. "The guests are waiting for an explanation. We need to do something about this situation." "What situation, Mother?" asked Sophia, her voice laden with a bitterness that surprised everyone. "The situation of being abandoned by the man who claimed to love me, or the situation of finally having someone who shows they truly care about me." The impact of Sophia's words was immediate. Several guests began to discreetly move away, clearly uncomfortable with the scene unfolding before them. Others, however, seemed fascinated by the social protocol breaking happening before their eyes. Dr. Michael Hayes, Nathan's older brother and a respected doctor in the region, who had come as a guest due to his friendship with the Bennett family, approached the group. "Excuse me," he said diplomatically. "Perhaps it would be better to continue this conversation in a more private setting. The guests are beginning to disperse, and it would be appropriate to offer an official explanation about the cancellation of the ceremony." Richard looked at Dr. Michael with an expression of relief. Finally, someone with practical sense was trying to resolve the situation civilly. "You're right, Doctor," agreed Richard. "Patricia, take Sophia inside. I'll speak with the guests and explain there was a last-minute problem." "I'm not going anywhere until this man finishes speaking," declared Sophia with a firmness that surprised everyone, especially herself. Nathan looked at Dr. Michael, who gave an almost imperceptible gesture of encouragement. The two brothers had always had a special connection, and Michael had always known about the feelings Nathan harbored for Sophia. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out now continuing. "Mrs. Sophia," continued Nathan, ignoring the hostile glances around him, "I know I'm just a gardener. I have no money, no social standing, nothing material to offer. But I have something that man clearly did not have, true love." "How can you speak of love?" interrupted Patricia indignantly. "You barely know my daughter." "On the contrary, Mrs. Patricia," Nathan replied respectfully, "I know Sophia better than anyone here imagines. I know the woman who cries hidden in the garden when she thinks no one is watching, not out of self-pity, but out of frustration for not being able to help more people. I know the woman who reads to the children at the hospital every Sunday, even when she's feeling unwell. Every word from Nathan was like a revelation to those present. Not even Patricia and Richard knew about all the charitable activities Sophia discreetly carried out. I know the woman," Nathan continued, "who cried for a week when she accidentally ran over a little bird with her wheelchair. The woman who has a heart so big it sometimes hurts herself to avoid hurting others." Sophia was visibly shaken. The accuracy with which Nathan described her most intimate feelings was both comforting and frightening. "How do you know all this?" she asked in a whisper. "Because I've been watching you for 2 years," Nathan admitted without shame. "Not as a stalker, but as someone who loves you from afar. Every expression of yours, every gesture, every small act of kindness. It's all been engraved in my heart." "Doctor," Michael cleared his throat discreetly, sensing the situation was becoming too intense for the public setting. "Nathan," he said softly, "perhaps it would be better for you to express your feelings at a more appropriate time." "No, Doctor," Nathan replied firmly. I've waited 2 years in silence. Today that man showed he doesn't deserve her love. If I don't speak now, when will I? Sophia took the rose from Nathan's hands, causing a collective gasp among the remaining guests. The flower trembled between her fingers as she struggled to process everything that was happening. "Are you offering me this rose because you feel sorry for me?" she asked, her voice laden with vulnerability. "No," Nathan replied immediately. "I'm offering it because you are the most extraordinary woman I've ever met. Because your physical disability does not define who you are. Because your heart is more beautiful than any rose I could ever grow." The silence that followed was broken by the sound of shoes approaching quickly. It was Emily Bennett, Sophia's younger sister, who had run after Brandon to try to convince him to come back. "Sophia!" she shouted, breathless. "I tried to talk to Brandon, but—" She stopped abruptly upon seeing the scene before her eyes, her sister holding a red rose, with the gardener kneeling at her side, surrounded by shocked guests and indignant parents. "What's going on here?" asked Emily, confused. "I'm asking your sister to be my girlfriend," Nathan said simply, provoking a new wave of scandalized murmurs. "Are you crazy?" exclaimed Emily. "She was just left at the altar. This is not the time for that." "On the contrary," replied Nathan, rising slowly. "It's exactly the right time. It's time to show her that there is someone who would never abandon her." Sophia watched the discussion around her as if she were a spectator in her own life. Part of her was shocked by Nathan's boldness, but another part felt deeply moved by his courage. "Did Brandon say anything?" she asked Emily, trying to shift the focus of the conversation. Emily hesitated, exchanging uncomfortable looks with her parents. He said he couldn't do it," she murmured. "That he wasn't ready." "Ready for what?" insisted Sophia. The awkward silence that followed was more eloquent than any answer. Nathan, sensing there was more to the story, stepped forward. "With all due respect," he said, addressing Emily, "but I think Sophia deserves to know the full truth about why that man abandoned her." "It's none of your business," Emily replied defensively. "It is my business," Nathan countered with surprising firmness, "because I love this woman, and I won't allow her to be shielded from a truth she has a right to know." Patricia approached Emily and whispered something in her ear. Emily's expression changed instantly, becoming even more troubled. "Mother, you can't be serious," Emily whispered back. "What are you talking about?" demanded Sophia, her voice taking on a commanding tone she rarely used. "I demand to know." Richard approached his daughter's wheelchair, his expression grave and weary. "Sophia," he said softly, "Brandon received a call this morning. It was from your doctor." Sophia's heart stopped for a moment. She had gone to the doctor the previous week for some routine tests, but the results hadn't come in yet. "What kind of call?" she asked, though something deep inside already suspected the answer. "The tests—" Richard hesitated, clearly struggling to find the right words. "The tests showed that you're pregnant, my daughter." Sophia's world stopped completely. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind like a distant bell. She had planned to tell Brandon during the honeymoon, as a romantic surprise. She never imagined he would find out this way. "And he ran because of that?" she asked, her voice almost inaudible. "He said—" Richard stopped, visibly reluctant to continue. "He said what, Dad?" "He said he wasn't prepared to raise a child with a woman like you," Richard finished, the words coming out with difficulty. The impact of the revelation hit Sophia like a punch to the stomach. Not only had Brandon abandoned her, but he had abandoned her because of her disability and the child she was carrying. Nathan, who had listened to everything in silence, felt a fury growing in his chest. Not a violent fury, but a deep indignation at the injustice Sophia was suffering. "What kind of man does that?" he said, his voice trembling with contained emotion. "What kind of man abandons the woman he loves just when she needs him most?" "The kind of man who never truly loved her," replied Sophia, her voice gaining unexpected strength. The tears that had been threatening to fall finally began to roll down her cheeks, but they were tears of relief mixed with pain. "Mrs. Sophia," said Nathan, kneeling before her again, "I don't know if I have the right to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. If this child were mine, I would be the proudest man in the world, and if you allow me, I will love them as if they were my own son or daughter." The impact of Nathan's words was immediate and profound. Several of the guests who still remained in the garden were visibly moved. Some of the older women began to cry discreetly, touched by the sincerity of his words. Patricia, however, exploded with indignation. "This has gone too far," she shouted. "How dare you make such a proposal to my daughter at a time like this? Do you think you can take advantage of her vulnerability?" "I am not taking advantage of anything," Nathan replied calmly. "I am offering unconditional love to a woman who deserves that, and so much more." "Unconditional love?" Patricia repeated with sarcasm. "You don't even have a decent job. How do you intend to support a family?" "Mother," Sophia interrupted, her voice sharp, "stop this immediately." "Sophia, you cannot be seriously considering—" "I am considering that finally someone sees me as a whole woman," said Sophia, wiping tears from her face. "Someone who doesn't see my wheelchair as an obstacle to loving or being loved." Dr. Michael approached the group, clearly concerned about the level of stress Sophia was facing. "Forgive the interruption," he said professionally, "but as a doctor I must warn that all this stress is not good for the pregnancy. Perhaps it would be better to continue this conversation another time." "Doctor," said Sophia, looking directly at him, "you know your brother better than anyone. Tell me honestly, is he the type of man who would make a proposal like this on impulse or out of pity?" Dr. Michael looked at Nathan, then back at Sophia. His answer would be crucial for the direction the situation would take. "Mrs. Sophia," he replied carefully, "Nathan is my younger brother, but he has always been the most sensible and courageous of the two of us. He has never done anything on impulse in his entire life. And if there's one thing I can assure you about him, it's that he doesn't know the word pity. He only knows true love and loyalty." "Michael," exclaimed Patricia indignantly, "how can you support this madness?" "I am not supporting any madness," Dr. Michael replied calmly. "I am defending the right of two adults to choose their own destiny." Sophia held firmly to the rose Nathan had given her, as if it were an anchor in the midst of the emotional storm she was living. She looked around, seeing the faces of the guests who still remained, some curious, others disapproving, a few with expressions of understanding. "Nathan," she said finally, her voice firmer than it had been all day, "are you sure of what you're saying? Are you sure you're not speaking from an emotional impulse?" "I am absolutely sure," he replied without hesitation. "Mrs. Sophia, I have been planning this moment for months. Not exactly like this, of course, but I have been gathering the courage to talk about my feelings for a long time." "And do you have concrete plans?" asked Richard, his voice still skeptical but with a slightly less hostile tone. "Because pretty words are easy to say, but raising a family requires practical responsibility." Nathan stood up and addressed Richard directly, showing respect but also determination. "Mr. Richard," he said, "I know I don't have much materially. I live in a simple house that belonged to my father. I have a motorcycle I inherited from him when he passed, and my salary as a gardener isn't much. But I have plans." Richard crossed his arms, clearly interested in hearing what those plans were. "What kind of plans?" "Mrs. Margaret, who owns the nursery where I buy the plants for the mansion's garden, has offered me a partnership in her business," Nathan explained. "She said I have a natural talent with plants, and that she could teach me the administrative side. In 5 years, we could have a network of nurseries in the region." This revelation surprised everyone, especially Sophia, who didn't know about the business talent Nathan apparently possessed. "Why did you never tell me about this opportunity?" asked Richard, genuinely curious. "Because I never felt worthy enough to accept it," admitted Nathan honestly. "I always thought I was just a gardener without a formal education. But watching Mrs. Sophia all these years, seeing her strength, I learned that we can be much more than we think we are." Sophia felt her heart race. Nathan's sincerity was unlike anything she had ever experienced. "And what about education?" asked Patricia, still trying to find flaws in Nathan's plan. "You barely finished high school." "That's true," agreed Nathan without defending himself. "But Dr. Michael has been helping me with private tutoring for 2 years, and Mrs. Sophia, without knowing it, has also taught me a lot." "How did I teach you?" asked Sophia, surprised. "Remember when you got angry with me because I pulled out some plants you thought were dead?" Sophia smiled slightly for the first time that day, remembering the incident. Yes, I remember. You were very upset. You told me the plants weren't dead, just sleeping until the next season, continued Nathan. And you explained how to tell when a plant is truly lost versus when it just needs special care. That conversation completely changed how I see gardening. It was just gardening, Nathan, said Sophia modestly. No, Mrs. Sophia, it was much more than that, replied Nathan. You taught me that sometimes the most beautiful things in life only bloom when they receive love and care, even when everyone thinks they're beyond hope. The symbolism of Nathan's words did not go unnoticed by anyone. Even Patricia seemed slightly touched, though she still maintained a disapproving expression. Emily, who had remained silent for most of the conversation, finally spoke up. Sophia, she said softly, I know this is all very confusing and painful, but maybe you should consider what this man is offering. Emily, exclaimed Patricia, scandalized. Mother, just listen for a minute, insisted Emily. Brandon showed us today who he really is. He abandoned Sophia at the worst possible moment. This man is offering to stand by her side in good times and bad. But what about the social difference, and what will people say? Argued Patricia. People are already talking, Mother, replied Emily pragmatically. They're talking about how our family was humiliated today. At least if Sophia chooses Nathan, they'll be talking about a true love story. Dr. Michael observed the family dynamics with professional interest. As a doctor, he had seen many families go through crises, and he knew this was a decisive moment for everyone involved. If I may, he interjected diplomatically, perhaps definitive decisions don't need to be made today. Everyone is emotionally shaken. It might be wise to give it some time for emotions to settle. No, said Sophia firmly, surprising everyone. I've already made my decision. The garden fell completely silent. Even the birds seemed to stop singing, waiting to hear what Sophia's next words would be. Nathan, she said, looking directly into his eyes, you said you love me. You said you would love my child as if it were your own. You said you have plans for the future. But I need to know one thing. Are you sure you can handle all the challenges that come with me? Nathan did not hesitate for a second. Mrs. Sophia, I won't lie and say it will be easy. I know there will be challenges, prejudices, financial difficulties, but I also know that by your side, I can face anything. And are you willing to give up your freedom for a pregnant woman you barely know? I won't be giving up my freedom, replied Nathan with conviction. I will be gaining a purpose in life. And I know you much better than you think. Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, processing everything that had happened on the most important day of her life. When she opened them again, there was a determination in her gaze that wasn't there before. Then yes, she said clearly, I accept dating you. The reaction was instant and explosive. Patricia screamed in shock. Richard cursed under his breath. Emily began to cry, and the few guests who still remained in the garden began talking excitedly among themselves. Nathan, however, simply smiled and gently took Sophia's free hand. Thank you for giving me this chance, he said softly. Don't thank me yet, Sophia replied with a half-smile. You don't know what you're getting into. Yes, I do, Nathan replied. I'm getting into the greatest adventure of my life. Dr. Michael approached the two, smiling discreetly. Nathan, he said, I think it would be appropriate for you to take Sophia to rest. It's been a very intense day for her, especially considering her condition. I don't need to rest, Sophia protested, but her voice revealed the emotional exhaustion she was feeling. Of course you do, Nathan said gently, and I'll make sure you get all the rest you need. Patricia approached the group, her expression still disapproving, but with a slightly less hostile tone. If you're going to do this, she said hesitantly, then do it right. No scandals, no rushing. And you, she pointed at Nathan, will have to prove you're not just taking advantage of the situation. I will prove it, Nathan promised solemnly. Every day for the rest of my life if necessary. Richard sighed deeply, clearly resigned to the situation. Well, he said wearily, at least today I learned who the family's real friends are and who are just opportunistic acquaintances. What do you mean, Dad? Asked Sophia. Most of the guests left as soon as Brandon left, explained Richard, but some stayed to make sure you were okay. That tells me a lot about people's character. Mrs. Francis, the housekeeper who had worked for the family for over 20 years, discreetly approached the group. "Sorry to interrupt," she said respectfully, "but I'd like to say that in all the years I've worked here, I've never seen anyone treat Miss Sophia with as much affection as Nathan. He always asks about her when she's not feeling well, always offers to help when she needs something in the garden." This revelation surprised Sophia again, who didn't know about the constant interest Nathan had shown in her well-being. "Thank you for saying that, Mrs. Francis," Sophia said emotionally. "It's the truth, my dear," replied the housekeeper, "and if I may give some advice, when someone shows they care about you through actions and not just words, you should value it." Patricia looked at the housekeeper with a thoughtful expression. Mrs. Francis was a trusted woman of the family, and her opinion had always been respected in the house. "Francis," Patricia said hesitantly, "do you really think—" "Mrs. Patricia," the housekeeper gently interrupted, "I raised 3 children alone after my husband left me. I know how to recognize a man of character when I see one, and Nathan is a man of character." The housekeeper's validation seemed to have a significant impact on Patricia, who finally began to reconsider her position. Dr. Michael took advantage of the moment of relative calm to make a practical suggestion. "If I may," he said, "I think it would be appropriate to schedule a medical appointment to monitor Sophia's pregnancy. And perhaps it would also be good to talk about the next practical steps in this new situation." "You're right," agreed Richard. "First things first, Sophia's health and the baby's. The rest we can figure out later." Nathan nodded vigorously. "I want to be present for every appointment," he said. "If Sophia allows it, of course." "I would allow it," Sophia replied. "But are you sure you want to take on so much responsibility so quickly?" "Sophia," said Nathan, kneeling once again before her wheelchair, "I spent 2 years dreaming of the possibility of being part of your life. Now that I have this chance, I won't waste a single minute." The sincerity of his words finally broke through Sophia's last resistance. For the first time since Brandon had abandoned her, she allowed herself to smile genuinely. "Then let's see where this adventure of ours leads," she said, squeezing Nathan's hand. The guests who still remained in the garden began to disperse slowly, some clearly disapproving of the situation, others visibly moved by the unexpected love story they had just witnessed. Mrs. Margaret, the owner of the nursery Nathan had mentioned, approached the group. She was a woman of about 60, with graying hair and hands calloused from working so much with plants. "Nathan," she said with a warm smile, "I heard what happened here today, and I want you to know my partnership offer still stands. In fact, after seeing your courage today, I'm even more certain you're the right person for the business." Nathan was visibly moved by the unexpected support. "Mrs. Margaret, thank you," he stammered. "And Mrs. Sophia," Margaret continued, addressing her directly, "if I may say so, you've chosen an exceptional man. Nathan has a natural talent with plants that's rare to see. He makes flowers bloom as if by magic." "It's not magic," Nathan said modestly. "It's just love for what I do." "That's exactly it," agreed Margaret. "And a man who loves his work with that intensity will certainly love the woman he's chosen with the same intensity." Patricia, who had been observing the entire interaction, finally approached Nathan. "Young man," she said with a hesitant voice, "I won't lie and say I approve of this situation, but I also can't deny you showed more courage and loyalty today than many men I've known have shown in a lifetime." Nathan looked at Patricia with respect and gratitude. "Mrs. Patricia, I understand your concerns. If I were Sophia's mother, I'd probably think the same. But I hope I get the chance to prove my intentions are genuine." "You'll have that chance," Patricia said with a sigh, "but know that I'll be watching your every step." "I wouldn't expect anything less from the mother of a woman like Sophia," Nathan replied respectfully. Richard approached the two, his expression still serious but no longer hostile. "Nathan," he said, "I'll be direct with you. I built a business empire protecting my family from people who might take advantage of them. It's my instinct to distrust anyone who gets close to Sophia." "I understand, sir," Nathan replied. "But," Richard continued, "what you did today showed a kind of character that's rare to see. You risked your job, your reputation, faced our entire family for her. That tells me something about who you really are." Nathan waited respectfully for Richard to finish. "Because of that," Richard finally said, "I'm going to give you a chance, but only one. If you hurt my daughter or take advantage of her in any way, I'll make sure you regret it for the rest of your life." "I won't hurt her," Nathan promised solemnly. "Not today, not ever." "We'll see," said Richard. "We'll see." Dr. Michael, who had been observing the entire family interaction, approached Sophia. "How are you feeling?" he asked professionally. "All this stress isn't good for you or the baby." "Strangely, I feel better than I have in months," replied Sophia honestly. "It's as if a weight has been lifted from my shoulders." "What kind of weight?" asked Dr. Michael, curious. Sophia thought for a moment before answering. "The weight of being with someone who didn't truly love me," she said finally. "I think deep down, I always knew Brandon wasn't with me for the right reasons." "And now?" asked Dr. Michael. Sophia looked at Nathan, who was talking with Mrs. Margaret about the plans for the nursery. "Now I feel like I'm finally with someone who sees me as I really am," she replied, "and who loves me for it, not in spite of it." Dr. Michael smiled, satisfied with the answer. "That's what matters most," he said. "The rest you build together." Emily approached Sophia, her eyes still red from crying. "Sister," she said softly, "are you sure about this? You're not making a decision based on an emotional impulse." "Emmy," replied Sophia, using her sister's affectionate nickname, "you know me better than anyone. Have I ever made an important decision on impulse in my life?" Emily thought for a moment and shook her head. "Never. You always think about everything 1,000 times before deciding anything." "Then trust me now," said Sophia. "I know what I'm doing." "And are you sure you're not being influenced by your hurt over Brandon?" insisted Emily. Sophia looked directly into her sister's eyes. "Emmy, for the first time in my life, I feel truly loved. Not out of pity, not out of obligation, not out of interest, out of pure and simple love. If that's being influenced by hurt, then so be it." Emily hugged her sister, finally convinced. "Then I support you," she said, "completely." The garden began to empty slowly. The house staff started to collect the decorations from the wedding that hadn't happened, a melancholy but necessary task. Nathan helped Sophia get more comfortable in the wheelchair. "Would you like to go inside the house?" he asked gently. "Or would you prefer to stay in the garden a little longer?" "Let's stay a little longer," replied Sophia. "This garden has always been my favorite place on the property, and now it has an even more special meaning." "Why?" asked Nathan, though he already suspected the answer. "Because this is where my true love story began," she said simply. Nathan smiled, feeling his heart fill with a happiness he had never experienced before. "Sophia," he said softly, "I promise I will do everything in my power to be worthy of the love you are giving me." "You are already worthy," she replied, "just for having the courage to stay when everyone else was leaving." They sat in silence for a few minutes, absorbing everything that had happened. The sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink that reflected off the white flowers still decorating the garden. "Nathan," Sophia said finally, "tell me about your family. I want to know everything about the man I've just accepted into my life." Nathan hesitated for a moment, clearly not used to talking about himself. "There's not much to tell," he said modestly. "We're a simple family. My father was a gardener too. My mother works as a seamstress. Dr. Michael has always been the family's pride for becoming a doctor." "And you?" asked Sophia. "Aren't you proud of what you've achieved?" "I never thought I'd achieved anything worthy of pride," Nathan admitted honestly. "Nathan," said Sophia firmly, "you have turned this garden into the most beautiful place I have ever seen in my life. You cared for every plant, every flower, with love and dedication. That is an extraordinary achievement." Nathan looked around the garden as if seeing it for the first time. "I had never thought about it that way," he said. "Well, you should have," Sophia replied, "and I hope to help you see your own qualities the way I see them." Dr. Michael approached the two, checking his watch. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, "but I think it would be prudent to schedule that medical appointment as soon as possible. I can call my obstetrician colleague tomorrow. That would be great, Sophia agreed. Thank you for all your help today, Doctor. It's the least I can do, Dr. Michael answered. Nathan is my brother, and now you are part of my family too. The idea of belonging to a new family based on love and not just blood ties moved Sophia deeply. Doctor, she said hesitantly, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you really think Nathan and I have a chance of making it? Or are you just being kind? Doctor, Michael considered the question carefully before answering. Sophia, he said finally, in my profession I see many couples, many families. I've learned to recognize when two people have a genuine connection. And you do. It won't be easy, there will be challenges, but you have something many couples never achieve: mutual respect and true love. And is that enough? Asked Sophia. It's the most important thing, replied Dr. Michael. Everything else is built on that. Patricia approached the group carrying a small bouquet of flowers from the garden. Sophia, she said hesitantly, I know today wasn't the day you dreamed of, but maybe it was the day you needed. Sophia looked at her mother with surprise and gratitude. What do you mean by that, Mom? I mean that maybe Brandon did you a favor, explained Patricia. He showed who he really was before it was too late, and you found someone who is truly worth it. Nathan was visibly moved by Patricia's words. Mrs. Patricia, he said with a choked voice, thank you for saying that. It means a lot to me. Don't thank me yet, said Patricia with a half-smile. You still have a lot to prove. And I will prove it, promised Nathan. One day at a time. Richard joined the group, his expression more relaxed than it had been all day. Well, he said pragmatically, now we need to think about the practical aspects of the situation. Nathan, you'll need a better place to live if you're going to start a family. I know, sir, Nathan replied. I was already thinking about that. Maybe I can get a loan to buy a small house. Or, Richard interjected, you can accept my offer. What offer? Asked a confused Nathan. There's a small house on the property near the lake, explained Richard. It's where the caretaker lived before he retired. It's been empty for 2 years. You can live there in exchange for taking care of the entire property, not just the gardens. The offer surprised everyone, especially Nathan, who hadn't expected such generosity. Mr. Richard, I don't know what to say, stammered Nathan. Say you accept, suggested Richard pragmatically. It's good for everyone. You have a place to live. I have someone trustworthy taking care of the property, and Sophia has you nearby. Sophia looked at her father with a mixture of gratitude and surprise. Dad, are you sure about this? She asked. I'm sure I'd rather have you happy and safe than worried about social conventions, Richard answered honestly. Dr. Michael smiled, pleased with the direction the situation was taking. It seems like everything is falling into place, he commented. Not everything, said Nathan thoughtfully. There's still the issue of the social difference, the people who will talk, the prejudices we'll face. Nathan, said Sophia firmly, since the accident that left me in a wheelchair, I've learned one important thing. People will always talk. What matters is how you handle it. And how do you handle it? Asked Nathan. I choose to listen only to the people who truly care about me, replied Sophia. The others I simply ignore. Mrs. Francis approached the group, carrying a tray with coffee and small pastries. Sorry to intrude, she said, but I thought you might need a little sugar after so much excitement. Thank you, Mrs. Francis, said Sophia gratefully. You always know what we need. It's what I've done for 20 years, replied the housekeeper with a smile. And if I may offer some advice... Of course, said Sophia. The best love stories are the ones that start with difficulties, said Mrs. Francis wisely. Because when you fight for something, you value it more when you get it. Nathan picked up a cup of coffee and offered it to Sophia before taking one for himself. Mrs. Francis is right, he said. Nothing worthwhile in life comes easy. And you two have already shown you're not afraid to fight, added Mrs. Francis. That's half the battle to success. The group fell silent for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts as they drank their coffee and absorbed the day's events. Emily broke the silence. Sophia, she said, you'll have to tell people about the pregnancy soon. How do you plan to handle that? Sophia unconsciously stroked her still unnoticeable belly. "I'll tell the truth," she said simply, "that I'm pregnant and that I've found a man who loves both me and my child." "And if they ask about Brandon," insisted Emily. "I'll say he wasn't prepared for the responsibility," replied Sophia diplomatically. "I won't speak ill of him publicly, but I also won't lie to protect him." Nathan nodded approvingly. "That's the right approach," he said. "Honesty without malice." Patricia looked at Nathan with a thoughtful expression. "Nathan," she said, "may I ask a personal question?" "Of course, Mrs. Patricia. Why have you never married? A man your age, with your qualities, you've certainly had opportunities." Nathan hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable with the question. Well, he stammered. "You can speak," encouraged Sophia. "I'd like to know, too." Nathan took a deep breath before answering. "The truth is, I always thought I was too inferior to deserve a good woman," he admitted. "My difficulty reading, my limited education, my financial situation, I always thought I had nothing to offer." "And what changed?" asked Patricia. Nathan looked directly at Sophia. "Sophia changed," he said simply. "Seeing her strength, the way she faces life's challenges, I realized that worth has nothing to do with money or social status. It's about character and love." The answer deeply touched everyone present. "Nathan," said Patricia softly, "you may not have a formal education, but you have a wisdom that many wealthy men I know don't possess." "Thank you, Mrs. Patricia," said Nathan emotionally. "That means a lot coming from you." Dr. Michael checked his watch again. "Everyone," he said, "I think it would be good to start wrapping up for today. It's been a very emotionally intense day for everyone, especially for Sophia." "You're right," agreed Sophia. "I'm starting to feel tired." Nathan immediately stood up. "Would you like me to take you inside the house?" he offered. "I would," said Sophia. "But first, I want to show you something." She guided the wheelchair to a specific part of the garden where there was a small flower bed with particularly beautiful red roses. "This is the flower bed you made especially for me when I was recovering from surgery last year," she said. Nathan was surprised she remembered. "You remember that?" he asked. "Of course I remember," replied Sophia. "You said red roses represented love and hope. I spent hours looking at them from my window." "I didn't know you paid attention," said Nathan modestly. "I paid attention to everything about you," admitted Sophia. "More than I should have, considering I was engaged to another man." This revelation surprised Nathan. You thought of me?" he asked incredulously. "Constantly," confessed Sophia, "and I felt guilty about it. I thought I was being disloyal to Brandon." "And now?" asked Nathan. "Now I realize my heart already knew who the right man was, long before my mind accepted it," replied Sophia. Nathan knelt once more beside Sophia's wheelchair. "Sophia," he said with emotion in his voice, "may I ask you a question?" "Of course. Would you agree to marry me?" The proposal took everyone by surprise, especially Sophia. "Nathan," she said with a trembling voice, "we just started dating. Isn't it too soon to talk about marriage?" "Perhaps it is," admitted Nathan. "But I don't want you or your son to face unnecessary awkwardness. I want everyone to know my intentions are serious and honorable." Richard approached the two. "Son," he said, "I admire your haste to do the right thing, but my daughter is right. You need to get to know each other better before making such a decision." "Father is right," agreed Sophia. "But I appreciate the intention, Nathan. It shows what kind of man you are." "What about an engagement?" suggested Patricia unexpectedly, surprising everyone. "It doesn't have to be long, but it would give you time to get used to the idea, and for society to get used to it too." Patricia's suggestion caught everyone off guard. "Mother," said Sophia, surprised, "are you serious?" "I am serious," confirmed Patricia. "If you're going to do this, do it properly. An official engagement shows the relationship is serious and respectful." Nathan looked at Sophia, waiting for her reaction. "What do you think?" he asked. Sophia thought for a few moments before answering. "I think," she said slowly, "I think it's a good idea. It would give us time to plan our future properly." "So you accept?" asked Nathan, a smile forming on his face. "I accept," replied Sophia, prompting spontaneous applause from everyone present. Dr. Michael approached to hug his brother. "Congratulations, Nathan," he said with pride. "You've finally found your happiness." "I found much more than that," replied Nathan, looking at Sophia. "I found my purpose in life." Mrs. Francis began to cry with emotion. "In all the years I've worked in this house," she said through tears, "this is the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed." Emily hugged her sister tightly. "I am so happy for you," she whispered in Sophia's ear. "You deserve all the happiness in the world." Richard extended his hand to Nathan. "Welcome to the family," he said solemnly. "So officially this time." "Thank you, sir," replied Nathan, shaking his future father-in-law's hand firmly and gratefully. The sun had set completely, and the garden lights began to turn on automatically, creating a magical atmosphere around the group. "I think this is the perfect ending to a day that started so difficultly," commented Dr. Michael. "It's not the ending," corrected Sophia with a smile. "It's just the beginning." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. In the weeks following the cancelled wedding day, Sophia and Nathan's life took a turn completely different from anything they had imagined. The news of the engagement between the Bennett heiress and the family gardener spread like wildfire throughout Aspen, generating reactions ranging from romantic admiration to moral scandal. Nathan moved into the caretaker's house on the Bennett property, as Richard had offered. It was a simple but comfortable house, with 2 bedrooms, a small living room, a kitchen, and a garden that Nathan quickly transformed into a small paradise of flowers and medicinal plants. Sophia visited the house every day, and together they began to plan what life would be like when they married and when the baby was born. During these conversations, they discovered a compatibility that went far beyond their initial physical or emotional attraction. "Nathan," Sophia said one sunny afternoon, watching him plant tomato seedlings in the garden, "have you ever thought about what kind of father you want to be?" Nathan stopped what he was doing and looked at her thoughtfully. "Every day," he answered honestly. "I want to be the kind of father my father was to me and to Michael. Present, affectionate but firm when necessary." "What was your father like?" asked Sophia, realizing she knew very little about her fiancé's family. Nathan smiled fondly at the memory of his father. "My father was a simple but wise man," he said. "He worked hard every day, but he always came home with energy to play with us. He never hit us, but when he spoke, we obeyed because we respected him." "And when did he die?" 5 years ago, Nathan replied, his voice growing softer. "Heart attack, it was very sudden. One morning he was planting roses in a client's garden. By the afternoon he was in the hospital, and by evening he was gone." Sophia felt her heart tighten at the pain in Nathan's eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "That must have been very hard." "It was," Nathan admitted. "But it also taught me to value every moment. My father always said we don't know how much time we have, so we'd better love intensely while we can." "Is that why you were so brave that day?" Sophia asked. "Exactly," Nathan confirmed. "I saw you being humiliated by that man and thought, if I don't act now, I might lose forever the chance to show my love for her." Sophia moved her wheelchair closer to him. "I am so grateful for your courage," she said, taking his dirt-stained hand in hers. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stayed." "You would have survived," Nathan said with conviction. "You are stronger than you think, but I hope you never have to find that out alone again." They sat in silence for a few moments, just appreciating each other's presence and the tranquility of the garden. "Nathan," Sophia finally said, "we need to talk about some practical things." "What kind of things?" "Well, first, your work with Mrs. Margaret at the nursery. Have you decided if you're going to accept the partnership?" Nathan sighed. "I want to accept," he said, "but I'm afraid I'm not ready. What if I ruin everything? What if I lose the money she invests in me?" Sophia looked at him seriously. "Nathan, are you afraid of failing, or are you afraid of succeeding?" The question took Nathan by surprise. "What do you mean?" Sometimes we're afraid of success because it changes our lives in ways we can't control, Sophia explained. You've spent your whole life seeing yourself as just a gardener. Maybe you're afraid to discover you can be much more than that. Sophia's words hit a sensitive spot in Nathan. Maybe you're right, he admitted. I've always felt safe being invisible, being just the gardener who tends the plants and leaves. But now you're not invisible anymore, Sophia said gently. Now you're my fiancé. You're going to be a father. You're going to have a business. You need to learn to see yourself the way I see you. And how do you see me? Asked Nathan. I see an intelligent, dedicated, caring, courageous man with an extraordinary talent for making things grow and flourish, Sophia answered without hesitation. I see a man who has the potential to be anything he wants to be. The conviction in Sophia's voice moved Nathan deeply. Sophia, he said, his voice choked. How can you have so much faith in me when I barely have faith in myself? Because true love sees potential, where the person themselves only sees limitations, she answered wisely. Just like you make me feel beautiful and complete, even when I feel broken and inadequate. Nathan knelt on the ground beside Sophia's wheelchair and took both her hands. Sophia, he said with intensity, I promise I will accept the partnership with Mrs. Margaret, and I will give my best to make it work. And I promise to be by your side, supporting you every step of the way, Sophia replied. They kissed softly, sealing another promise in their relationship, which was growing stronger every day. The next day, Nathan went to Mrs. Margaret's nursery to formalize the partnership. It was a modest but well-kept establishment, with an impressive variety of ornamental plants, fruit tree saplings and flowers of all kinds. Mrs. Margaret greeted him with a warm smile. Nathan, she exclaimed, finally. I've been waiting for you to show up here since the day of the non-wedding. Sorry for the delay, Mrs. Margaret, Nathan said respectfully. I needed to sort out some personal things first. And did you? She asked with a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. I did, Nathan confirmed with a smile, and now I'm ready to accept your partnership offer. Great, said Mrs. Margaret, clapping her hands. Let's go to my office to talk about the details. Mrs. Margaret's office was small but organized, with shelves full of gardening manuals and photographs of gardens she had helped create over the years. So, Nathan, she said, sitting behind a simple wooden desk, I'll be direct with you. This business is doing well, but I'm getting old. I need someone young with energy and talent to help me expand. What kind of expansion do you have in mind? Asked Nathan. Well, first, I want to open another nursery in the neighboring town, explained Mrs. Margaret. Then I'm thinking of creating a full landscaping service, and in the future, who knows, maybe even export plants to other regions. Nathan's eyes lit up with the possibilities. That sounds amazing, he said, but I don't know anything about business management. I'll teach you, said Mrs. Margaret simply, and you can take night classes. The important thing is you have the natural talent that can't be taught. The rest we can learn. They spent 2 hours discussing the partnership details. Mrs. Margaret would be the majority partner initially, but as Nathan learned and contributed, his share would increase. One last thing, Nathan, said Mrs. Margaret at the end of the meeting. I heard you're going to be a father. Yes, Ma'am, Nathan confirmed, without going into details about the complex situation. Good, she said with approval. A man who takes on responsibilities is exactly the kind of partner I'm looking for. When Nathan returned home, he found Sophia waiting for him in the garden with an anxious expression on her face. How did it go? She asked immediately. Better than I expected, Nathan replied with a wide smile. Mrs. Margaret has big plans for the business, and she wants to teach me everything about management. I knew it, exclaimed Sophia with joy. I knew it would work out. There's more, said Nathan, his excitement growing. She said that when I learn enough, we can open a branch specializing in medicinal plants. Apparently there's a big market for that in the region. Sophia clapped her hands with joy. Nathan, that's wonderful, she said. You're fulfilling dreams you didn't even know you had. It's true, Nathan agreed, and it all started because you made me believe I could be more than I thought. They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans for the future. Nathan described in detail everything he had discussed with Mrs. Margaret, and Sophia contributed ideas and suggestions based on her experience with managing the family businesses. "You know what else impresses me?" said Sophia at one point. "What?" "You have a natural instinct for business," she explained. "The questions you asked Mrs. Margaret, the concerns you raised, it shows you think like an entrepreneur, even without realizing it." "You think so?" asked Nathan, genuinely surprised. "I'm sure," confirmed Sophia. "And you know what that means?" "What?" "It means our son will have a father who not only loves him, but can also give him a secure and prosperous future." The mention of the baby always moved Nathan deeply. "Sophia," he said softly, "can I touch your belly?" Sophia smiled and guided his hand to her still unnoticeable womb. "Our son," Nathan murmured with reverence. "Our son," repeated Sophia, covering his hand with hers. They stayed like that for several minutes, connected not only to each other but to the new life that was growing and that represented the future they were building together. A few weeks later, the day of the first prenatal appointment arrived. Dr. Michael had scheduled it with Dr. Jennifer Morrison, one of the best obstetricians in the region. Nathan was visibly nervous when they arrived at the office. "Are you okay?" asked Sophia, noticing his anxiety. "It's the first time I'm going to an appointment as a father," he said hesitantly. "Adoptive father," corrected Sophia gently. "No," said Nathan firmly, "as a father. This baby is going to be my child in every way that matters." The determination in Nathan's voice moved Sophia deeply. Dr. Jennifer was a woman of about 40, with a warm but professional presence. "So you must be the famous Nathan," she said with a friendly smile when they entered the office. "Dr. Michael told me your story. Very romantic." "Thank you, Doctor," Nathan replied shyly. "And Sophia," continued Dr. Jennifer, "how have you been feeling?" "Well, considering the circumstances," replied Sophia. "Some morning sickness, but nothing unbearable." "That's normal," reassured Dr. Jennifer. "Let's do some tests to see how everything is." During the exam, when the sound of the baby's heartbeat echoed through the room via the ultrasound machine, Nathan began to cry silently. "First time hearing it?" asked Dr. Jennifer kindly. Nathan just nodded, unable to speak. "Care's always moving," said the doctor understandingly, "and this baby has a strong, healthy heart. Is he okay?" asked Sophia anxiously. "Perfectly okay," confirmed Dr. Jennifer. "Right size for the gestational age, all parameters normal. Congratulations to you both." When they left the office, Nathan was still visibly emotional. "Did you hear?" he said to Sophia. "Our son has a strong heart." "I heard," replied Sophia with tears in her eyes, "and I saw how you reacted. Nathan, you're already a wonderful father and the baby isn't even born yet." "I've never felt so complete," said Nathan, struggling to find the right words. "It's as if my whole life has led to this moment." They decided to go to the city park to celebrate the good news. Sophia had always liked the park, especially the part near the lake, where she could feed the ducks and watch other families enjoying happy moments. "Nathan," said Sophia, as they watched a young couple playing with their small child, "have you ever thought about how we'll tell our story to our son when he grows up?" Nathan considered the question carefully. "We'll tell the truth," he said finally, "that his biological father wasn't prepared to be a father, but that he gained a father who chose him and loved him since before he was born." "And what if he asks about Brandon?" insisted Sophia. "We'll say that Brandon is a good person who simply wasn't ready for the responsibility of being a father," replied Nathan diplomatically. "We won't speak ill of him, but we also won't lie about what happened." Nathan's maturity regarding the delicate situation impressed Sophia. "You're right," she agreed. "Honesty is always the best policy with children. And who knows," added Nathan thoughtfully, "one day Brandon might change his mind and want to meet his son. If that happens, we won't prevent it. But he'll know that I'm the father who raised, educated, and was present every day." Nathan's generosity of spirit, even toward someone who had deeply hurt the woman he loved, showed Sophia the kind of exceptional man she had chosen to spend her life with. While at the park, they encountered Jessica Parker, an old school friend of Sophia's, who was out for a walk with her 2 small children. "Sophia!" exclaimed Jessica in surprise. "What a coincidence to run into you here." The 2 women greeted each other warmly, and Sophia introduced Nathan. "Jessica, this is my fiancé, Nathan," she said proudly. "Fiancé?" repeated Jessica, confused. "But I thought you were going to marry Brandon Hartwell." "Plans changed," said Sophia simply, without going into details. Jessica discreetly glanced at Nathan, clearly trying to process the situation. "It's a pleasure to meet you," she said politely. "The pleasure is mine," replied Nathan courteously. After Jessica said goodbye and walked away with the children, Sophia sighed. "That's a conversation I'm going to have many times in the coming months," she remarked. "Does it bother you?" asked Nathan. "It bothers me that people will judge you without knowing you," replied Sophia honestly. "But it doesn't bother me to have to explain that I chose the right man." "And are you sure you chose the right man?" asked Nathan, a shadow of insecurity crossing his face. Sophia stopped the wheelchair and turned to look at him directly. "Nathan Hayes," she said firmly, "you are the man who stayed when everyone else left. You are the man who took on a child who isn't even biologically yours. You are the man who makes me feel loved every single day. If that's not the right man, then I don't know what is." Sophia's words dispelled Nathan's momentary insecurities. "Thank you for reminding me," he said, gently kissing her forehead. When they returned home, they found Patricia waiting for them in the living room, with a worried expression on her face. "Mom," said Sophia upon seeing her, "is something wrong?" "Sophia, dear," said Patricia hesitantly, "I just got a very strange phone call." "What kind of call?" asked Nathan, immediately alert. "It was from Brandon," replied Patricia, causing a tense silence in the room. Sophia felt her stomach tighten. "What did he want?" she asked, trying to keep her voice calm. "He said he wants to talk to you," explained Patricia. "Said he made a mistake and wants a chance to explain himself." Nathan visibly tensed, but said nothing, waiting to see how Sophia would react. "And what did you say to him?" asked Sophia. "Said she would pass along the message, but the decision would be yours," replied Patricia. Sophia fell silent for a few moments, processing the information. "Sophia," said Nathan softly, "whatever your decision, I support you." "Are you sure?" she asked. "Wouldn't it bother you if I spoke with him?" "I would be worried," Nathan admitted honestly, "but I would trust you, and I think you have a right to an explanation, even if it's too late to change anything." Nathan's maturity and trust impressed both Sophia and Patricia. "Mum," Sophia finally said, "you can call him and say I agree to talk, but here at home, with you and Nathan present." "Are you sure, dear?" asked Patricia. "I'm sure," confirmed Sophia. "I need to properly close this chapter of my life before I can move on completely." Nathan nodded approvingly. "I think it's the right decision," he said, "and I'll be by your side the whole time." Patricia scheduled the meeting for the following afternoon. Brandon arrived punctually, driving his imported car and wearing an expensive suit, a stark contrast to Nathan's simplicity. The tension in the air was palpable as he entered the living room. Sophia was seated in her wheelchair, with Nathan standing beside her and Patricia sitting in a nearby armchair. "Sophia," said Brandon, his voice laden with emotion, "thank you for agreeing to see me." "You don't need to thank me," Sophia replied coldly. "Just say what you came to say." Brandon glanced nervously at Nathan, clearly uncomfortable with his presence. I would like to speak in private," he said. "No," Sophia said firmly. "Nathan is my fiancé, and my mother is my family. Anything you have to say to me can be said in front of them." Brandon sighed, realizing he had no choice. "All right," he agreed. "Sophia, I came here because I realized I made the biggest mistake of my life." "Go on," said Sophia, her voice betraying no emotion. "When I found out about the pregnancy, I panicked," explained Brandon. "It wasn't because of your disability, as you must have thought. It was because I wasn't ready to be a father. And abandoning a pregnant woman at the altar is the proper way to handle that," asked Nathan, unable to contain himself. Brandon looked at him with hostility. "I wasn't talking to you," he said sharply. "But I am talking to you," Nathan replied calmly. "And I have every right to speak, considering I'm going to be this child's father." "The child is mine," Brandon exploded. "Biologically, perhaps," Nathan said without flinching. "But in every other way that matters, she will be mine." Sophia raised her hand, calling for silence. "Both of you, stop," she said with authority. "Brandon, finish saying what you came to say." Brandon took a deep breath, trying to compose himself. "Sophia, I was scared," he continued. "The idea of having a child, of having all that responsibility, I couldn't handle it. So I ran." "And now?" asked Sophia. "What changed?" "Now, I've had time to think," said Brandon. "And I realized I lost the woman I loved because of fear. I want a second chance." The silence that followed was heavy and uncomfortable. Patricia watched everything intently, ready to intervene if necessary. Nathan remained calm but alert. "Brandon," Sophia finally said, "are you asking for a second chance out of love or out of guilt?" The question caught Brandon off guard. "Out of love, of course," he replied, but without much conviction. "That's a lie," Sophia said firmly. "If you loved me, you would never have abandoned me at the moment I needed you most." "Sophia, please." "No," she interrupted. "Let me finish. You abandoned me, pregnant at the altar, in front of 100 people. You humiliated me in the worst possible way. And now you come here asking for a second chance. I know I was wrong," said Brandon desperately, "but we can start over. We can be a real family." Nathan took a step forward, his patience finally running out. "A real family," he repeated incredulously. "Where were you when Sophia had morning sickness? Where were you when she needed to go to the doctor? Where were you when she cried from fear of raising a child alone?" I can make up for all of that," Brandon stammered. "You can't," said Nathan firmly, "because I was already there. I held her hand during the first doctor's appointment. I comforted her when she felt insecure. I am already being the father this child needs." Brandon looked at Sophia with desperation. "Sophia, you can't seriously be thinking of marrying him," he said, pointing at Nathan. "He's a gardener. He can't give you everything I can give you." "You're right," said Sophia calmly. "He can't give me everything you can give me. He can't give me an imported car, expensive jewelry, or trips around the world." Brandon's face lit up, thinking Sophia was acknowledging his advantages. "Exactly," he said. "I can give you a life of luxury. Our child can have the best school, but he can give me something you never could," continued Sophia, interrupting Brandon. "He can give me true love, absolute loyalty, and the certainty that he will never abandon me." Brandon's expression changed drastically. "Sophia, you're making a mistake," he said bitterly. "This man is taking advantage of your vulnerable situation." "My vulnerable situation?" repeated Sophia with growing indignation. "And who left me vulnerable, Brandon? Who abandoned me at the worst moment of my life? I've already apologized for that." "An apology doesn't erase the humiliation," replied Sophia. "An apology doesn't erase the days of crying, the sleepless nights, the fear of the future. But Nathan's love erased all of that." Brandon looked around the room, searching for support. "Mrs. Patricia," he said, addressing Sophia's mother, "you can't approve of this madness. Your daughter is throwing her life away." Patricia stood up slowly, her posture dignified and imposing. "Brandon," she said with a cold voice, "you abandoned my daughter on the day that should have been the happiest of her life. This man," she pointed at Nathan, "treated her with more love and respect in one day than you did in 2 years of engagement." "But, Mrs. Patricia—" "There are no buts," interrupted Patricia. "Your presence is no longer welcome in this house. Please leave." Brandon stood still for a few seconds, clearly shocked by the family's complete rejection. "Sophia," he said one last time, "if you change your mind—" "I won't change my mind," said Sophia with absolute firmness. "Never." Brandon looked at Nathan with poorly disguised hatred. "You may have won for now," he said bitterly, "but when she realizes you can't properly support her, she'll come back to me." Nathan stepped closer to Brandon, his posture calm but intimidating. "I will support my family with love, honest work, and dedication," he said quietly. "Three things you clearly don't understand." Brandon left the house, slamming the door, leaving a heavy silence behind him. Sophia sighed deeply, as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "It's over," she said simply. "How do you feel?" asked Nathan, kneeling beside her chair. "Free," answered Sophia with a smile. "Finally free." Patricia approached the two. "Sophia, dear," she said with pride, "you made the right choice. And Nathan, you behaved like a true gentleman." "Thank you, Mrs. Patricia," said Nathan. "I know it wasn't easy for you to accept me at first." "It certainly wasn't," admitted Patricia honestly, "but you've proven your worth in every way that matters." In the weeks following the meeting with Brandon, Sophia and Nathan's life settled into a happy and productive routine. Nathan was dedicating himself intensely to learning the nursery business with Mrs. Aker, Margaret, while Sophia prepared for the baby's arrival and helped with the administrative matters of the new company. The relationship between them deepened in ways neither had anticipated. They discovered they shared not only love, but also fundamental values about family, work, and life. "Nathan," Sophia said one morning as they had coffee in the gardener's house yard, "have you chosen a name for the baby yet?" "I have a few ideas," he replied with a smile, "but I wanted to know first if you have any preferences." "Actually, I do," said Sophia. "If it's a girl, I'd like to name her Rose." "Rose?" repeated Nathan, surprised. "Because of the roses in the garden?" "Because of the red rose you gave me on the hardest day of my life," Sophia explained. "That rose represented hope when I had none left." Nathan was visibly moved by the explanation. "And if it's a boy?" he asked. "I was thinking of Michael," said Sophia. "It means who is like God, and I want our son to have the strength and kindness needed to face anything in life." "Rose and Michael," Nathan repeated thoughtfully. "They're perfect names." "So you agree?" "I completely agree," said Nathan. "But may I suggest the middle names?" "Of course." "If it's Rose, what about Rose Hope?" suggested Nathan. "And if it's Michael, Michael Hope?" Sophia was touched by the suggestion. "Hope is perfect," she agreed, "because that's what you brought into my life." They spent the rest of the morning talking about plans for the future, from decorating the baby's room to dreams of expanding the plant business to other regions of the country. In the afternoon, they received an unexpected visit. It was Dr. Michael, accompanied by an elegant woman Sophia didn't recognize. "Nathan, Sophia," said Dr. Michael with a mysterious smile, "I'd like to introduce you to Victoria Collins." Victoria was a woman of about 50, well-dressed and with a professional air. "It's a pleasure to meet you," said Victoria with a slightly different accent. "Michael has told me a lot about you both." "Victoria is a lawyer specializing in business law," explained Dr. Michael, "and she has an interesting proposal for you." Nathan and Sophia exchanged curious glances. "What kind of proposal?" asked Sophia. "Well," said Victoria, sitting in the chair Nathan had offered, "I represent a group of investors interested in expanding the ornamental plant and landscaping market in the region." "And what does that have to do with us?" asked Nathan, genuinely confused. "We've heard about your talent with plants and the partnership you're forming with Mrs. Margaret," explained Victoria, "and we'd like to propose an investment partnership." The proposal caught both Nathan and Sophia completely by surprise. "What do you mean, an investment partnership?" asked Sophia, her experience with the family business making her understand the implications. "We would invest capital to rapidly expand the nursery network in exchange for a share of the profits," explained Victoria. "You would retain operational control, but would have the resources to grow much more quickly." Nathan became visibly nervous at the magnitude of the proposal. "But I'm barely learning the basics," he said honestly. "How can I manage a large operation like that?" "That's why the partnership would include specialized consulting," said Victoria patiently. "You would have all the support needed to learn and grow." Dr. Michael stepped forward. "Nathan," he said, "this is a unique opportunity. Victoria represents serious people with a lot of money and genuine interest in the sector." Sophia, however, was analyzing the situation with more skepticism. "Victoria," she said diplomatically, "this proposal seems too good to be true. Why would a group of investors be interested in a small business like ours?" Victoria smiled, clearly impressed with Sophia's shrewdness. Because you won't be small for very long, she replied. The ornamental plant market is growing exponentially. More and more people want to bring nature into their homes and offices, and you have something that can't be bought: natural talent and genuine passion for what you do. And what exactly would the terms of this partnership be? Asked Sophia, her business experience taking over. Victoria took a folder from her bag and placed it on the table. Everything is here, she said. Initial investment of $2 million, 30% share in the profits, and a commitment to reinvestment for 5 years. The numbers made Nathan choke. $2 million? He repeated, incredulous. It's a substantial investment, but proportional to the potential we see in the business, explained Victoria. Sophia picked up the documents and began to examine them carefully. May I take these documents for review? She asked. Of course, agreed Victoria, but the offer has a deadline. We need an answer in 2 weeks. After Victoria and Dr. Michael left, Nathan and Sophia sat in silence for several minutes, trying to process what had happened. Sophia, Nathan said finally, do you think this is real? It seems real, Sophia replied cautiously, but we'll need to verify everything very carefully before making any decision. $2 million, murmured Nathan, still in shock. I've never seen that much money in my life. It's a lot of money, agreed Sophia. But with great opportunities come great responsibilities. Are you prepared for that? Nathan considered the question carefully. Alone? No, he admitted. But with you by my side, I think I can face any challenge. Sophia smiled and took his hand. Then let's study this proposal together, she said, and make the best decision for our future and our child's future. They spent the next few days meticulously analyzing every aspect of the proposal. Sophia used her contacts in the business community to verify Victoria and her investors' credibility, while Nathan talked extensively with Mrs. Margaret about the partnership's implications for the current business. What did Mrs. Margaret think of the proposal? Asked Sophia during one of their late-night review sessions. She was excited, replied Nathan. She said it's exactly the kind of opportunity she always dreamed of, but never had enough capital to pursue. And she doesn't mind that you won't be the sole owners of the business anymore. Actually, she prefers it that way, explained Nathan. She said she'd rather have a smaller share in a large, successful company than own something small and limited. Sophia nodded, understanding the logic. That makes sense, she agreed, and my contacts confirmed that Victoria represents a legitimate group of investors with a solid track record. So you think we should accept? Asked Nathan. Sophia hesitated before answering. I think it's an incredible opportunity, she said, but I want to make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. How so? Are you accepting because you truly want to expand the business and build something big, or because you think you need to get rich to be worthy of me? Sophia asked directly. The question hit a sensitive spot for Nathan. He began, then stopped. Maybe a little of both. Nathan, Sophia said softly, you are already worthy of me. You've already proven that 1,000 times over. You don't need to be rich to deserve my love. But I want to be able to give you and our son everything you deserve, said Nathan. And you can, assured Sophia, with or without this investment. But if we're going to accept, let it be because we want to build something extraordinary together, not because you think you need to prove something. Nathan reflected on Sophia's words for several minutes. You're right, he finally said. I want to accept because I believe we can create something truly special, something that not only brings us prosperity, but also makes a difference in other people's lives. How so? Asked Sophia, intrigued. I was thinking, explained Nathan with growing enthusiasm. What if we used part of the company's success to create a program that teaches gardening to people with disabilities, or that provides plants for free to hospitals and nursing homes? Sophia's eyes lit up at the idea. Nathan, that's brilliant, she exclaimed. Using the business as a force for social good. Exactly, said Nathan. That way we wouldn't just be making money, we'd be building a legacy. The conversation sealed their decision. The next day they called Victoria and scheduled a meeting to finalize the partnership details. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. The meeting took place in Victoria's office, a modern and elegant space in the city centre. Besides Victoria, 2 other representatives from the investor group were present: Marcus Thompson, an experienced businessman in the agribusiness sector, and Christine Anderson, a franchise expansion specialist. "Nathan, Sophia," said Victoria once everyone was settled around the meeting table, "we were very happy with your decision to accept our proposal." "Thank you for the opportunity," Nathan replied respectfully. "But we have some additional conditions we would like to include in the agreement." Marcus raised an eyebrow, interested. "What kind of conditions?" he asked. Sophia stepped forward, taking on the role of spokesperson for the business negotiations. "We want to include a clause that allocates 5% of the annual profits to social projects related to therapeutic gardening and the free distribution of plants to charitable institutions." Christine smiled, clearly impressed. "What an interesting idea," she commented. "That could be excellent for the brand's image." "It's not a question of image," clarified Nathan. "It's a question of purpose. We want to build a business that makes a difference in the world." Marcus nodded approvingly. "I admire that approach," he said. "In fact, it adds value to the investment. Companies with social responsibility perform better in the long term." Victoria made some notes on the documents. "I see no problem including that clause," she said. "What other conditions do you have?" "We want to maintain total control over decisions related to employee well-being and the company's environmental policies," said Sophia. "And we want a guarantee that you will never use pesticides or fertilizers that could harm the environment." "Those are very reasonable conditions," agreed Christine. "In fact, they align perfectly with current market trends." The negotiations continued for 2 hours, with every detail being carefully discussed and agreed upon. In the end, they had a contract that satisfied both the investors and Nathan and Sophia's dreams. "There's one more thing," said Nathan, as they were about to sign the documents. "What would that be?" asked Victoria. "Mrs. Margaret needs to be present for the signing," he said. "Without her, none of this would be possible." "Of course," Victoria agreed immediately. "Actually, it would be an honor to have Mrs. Margaret with us at this historic moment." The signing ceremony was scheduled for the following week at Mrs. Margaret's nursery, surrounded by the plants that had been the catalyst for all that transformation. During the preparation week, Nathan couldn't hide his excitement and nervousness. "Sophia," he said one afternoon, "sometimes I wake up and I can't believe all of this is really happening." "It's real," assured Sophia with a smile, "and you deserve every second of it." "We deserve it," corrected Nathan. "I could never have gotten here without you." "Of course you could," protested Sophia. "You always had the talent and the dedication. I just helped you believe in yourself." Nathan approached her wheelchair and knelt down, as had become his custom whenever he wanted to have an intimate conversation. "Sophia," he said softly, "there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" "I love you more every day," he said with emotion. "And it's not just because you support me or because we're going to have a child together. It's because you make me want to be the best version of myself." Sophia felt tears forming in her eyes. "Nathan," she said with a choked voice, "you already are the best version of yourself. You just needed to realize it." They kissed tenderly, a moment of intimacy and connection amid all the exciting changes happening in their lives. The day of the contract signing dawned sunny and perfect. Mrs. Margaret's nursery was more beautiful than ever, with all the plants in full bloom, as if nature itself was celebrating the moment. In addition to the investors and close family, Mrs. Margaret had invited some of her oldest clients to witness the historic moment. Even some employees from the Bennett estate came to honor Nathan. "Nathan," said Mrs. Margaret shortly before the ceremony, "I want you to know how proud I am of you. When I offered that first partnership, I saw potential, but you have exceeded all my expectations." "Thank you, Mrs. Margaret," replied Nathan, moved. "You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself." "And now look where we are," she said with a radiant smile. The signing ceremony was simple but moving. Victoria gave a speech about the bright future she envisioned for the company. Marcus spoke about the expansion potential, and Christine highlighted the innovative aspect of the business's social component. When it was Nathan's turn to speak, he stood before all those present with Sophia by his side. 6 months ago, he began, his voice slightly trembling with emotion, I was just a gardener who quietly tended to plants. Today, I am here signing a contract to create something that can change many lives. He looked at Sophia with love. This was only possible because an extraordinary woman believed in me, he continued. She taught me that worth has nothing to do with money or social position. It's about character, dedication, and love. All those present applauded, moved. And I promise, said Nathan, addressing both the investors and his family, that we will build not just a successful company, but a legacy of love, care, and social responsibility. When they finally signed the documents, there was an explosion of applause and congratulations. Mrs. Margaret cried with emotion. Patricia and Richard hugged Nathan as if he were truly their son, and Sophia radiated pride and happiness. During the impromptu party that followed the signing, Dr. Michael approached Nathan. Brother, he said with pride, Dad would be so proud if he could see you today. You think so? Asked Nathan, always touched when someone mentioned his father. I'm sure, confirmed Dr. Michael. He always said that the most important thing in life wasn't how much money you had, but how many lives you positively touched. And that's exactly what I intend to do, said Nathan with determination. As the afternoon wore on and the party began to disperse, Sophia and Nathan were left alone in the nursery garden, absorbing everything that had happened. How are you feeling? Asked Sophia. Scared, admitted Nathan honestly, but also more excited than I've ever felt in my life. And it's normal to be scared, reassured Sophia. Great opportunities always bring great responsibilities. What if I can't do it? Asked Nathan, voicing his deepest fear. Sophia turned her wheelchair to face him. Nathan Hayes, she said firmly, you've already proven you can overcome any obstacle. You turned a simple garden into the most beautiful place on the property. You won the heart of a woman who thought she could never love again. You took on a child who isn't even biologically yours. If that's not proof you can do anything, I don't know what is. Sophia's words dissipated Nathan's momentary insecurities. You're right, he said with a smile. And besides, I'm not doing this alone. I have you. I have Mrs. Margaret. I have a whole team of people supporting me. Exactly, agreed Sophia, and together we can conquer the world. They spent the rest of the afternoon making detailed plans for the coming months. The first step would be expanding the current nursery, followed by opening 2 branches in neighboring towns. At the same time, they would begin developing the social responsibility program. You know what I'm most excited to start? Said Nathan at one point. What? The program for people with disabilities, he answered. I want to show that everyone can contribute, regardless of their physical limitations. That's going to be amazing, agreed Sophia. And who knows, maybe we'll inspire other companies to do something similar. That's the goal, said Nathan. We don't just want to be successful. We want to create a model that others can follow. When they finally returned home that night, they found a surprise waiting for them. Richard had hired a small decorating crew to prepare the baby's room in the caretaker's house. Dad? Said Sophia, surprised to see the lights on in the house. I thought you deserved a little surprise after such a special day, explained Richard with a smile. When they entered the house, they were speechless. What was once an empty room had been transformed into a perfect nursery, decorated in soft shades of green and yellow, with plant and flower motifs on the walls. Daddy, said Sophia with tears in her eyes, this is beautiful. And practical too, added Richard pragmatically. Everything was chosen with accessibility for your wheelchair in mind. Nathan was visibly moved by the gesture. Mr. Richard, he said with a choked voice, thank you. This means so much to us. You're part of the family now, said Richard simply. And this child will be my grandchild. I want you to have everything you need. Patricia appeared in the doorway of the room, carrying a small red rose in a pot. To complete the decor, she said with a smile, placing the rose on the nursery windowsill. Mom, said Sophia emotionally, you didn't have to do all this. Yes, we did, replied Patricia. You've taught us so much about true love. It's the least we can do to give back. That night, Sophia and Nathan stayed up late, talking about the future while gazing at the nursery that would soon house their son. "Nathan," said Sophia softly, "do you think our son will grow up knowing how loved he is?" "I'm absolutely certain," answered Nathan without hesitation. "Because she'll grow up in a family that built happiness on solid foundations: love, respect, honest work, and compassion for others. And she'll know that no matter what challenges life brings, there will always be people willing to fight by her side," added Sophia. "As we learned," agreed Nathan, gently kissing Sophia's still not showing belly. The following months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The company grew rapidly, exceeding all investor expectations. Nathan proved to be not only a talented gardener, but also a born leader, inspiring employees and winning over clients with his genuine passion for what he did. The social responsibility program was also an extraordinary success. They established partnerships with 5 hospitals in the region, providing plants and therapeutic gardening sessions for recovering patients. They also created a training program for people with disabilities, teaching them to cultivate plants as a form of income generation. "The third quarter numbers are impressive," commented Victoria during a follow-up meeting. "You're growing 50% faster than we projected." "It's the result of having a team that truly believes in what they're doing," replied Nathan modestly. Marcus nodded approvingly. "And the social program's impact has been fantastic for the brand," he added. "You're becoming a case study on how to combine commercial success with positive social impact." Sophia, who was 7 months pregnant and radiating happiness, smiled proudly. "The most important thing is that we're truly making a difference in people's lives," she said. "The financial success is a consequence of that." Christine consulted her reports. "Speaking of expansion," she said, "we have proposals to open branches in 3 different states. Do you feel ready for growth of that magnitude?" Nathan and Sophia exchanged looks. They had discussed this possibility extensively. "We're ready," replied Nathan confidently. "But we want to maintain our business philosophy in all branches. Quality, sustainability, and social responsibility are non-negotiable." "That's exactly why you're having so much success," said Victoria with admiration. After the meeting, Nathan and Sophia went home, where they found Dr. Michael waiting with news. "How was the appointment with Dr. Jennifer?" asked Sophia immediately. Dr. Michael smiled broadly. "Everything is perfect," he answered. "The baby is in an ideal position. All parameters are excellent. She thinks you could give birth any time in the next 2 weeks." 2 weeks, repeated Nathan, becoming visibly nervous. "Already?" "The baby is ready to meet the parents," said Dr. Michael with amusement. "And by the looks of it, the father is almost ready to meet the baby." Sophia laughed at Nathan's panicked expression. "Calm down, love," she said. "You're going to be a wonderful father." "But what if I don't know what to do?" asked Nathan. "What if I drop the baby? What if he cries and I don't know why?" Dr. Michael put his hand on his brother's shoulder. "Nathan," he said calmly, "every first-time father has these fears. It's normal, but what matters is the love you feel. The rest you learn by doing." "Michael is right," agreed Sophia. "No one is born knowing how to be a father. It's a daily learning process." That night, Nathan was too restless to sleep. He went out to the garden and stood contemplating the plants under the moonlight. Sophia found him there an hour later. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "I'm thinking," replied Nathan, "about everything that's changed in my life in the past year." "And how do you feel about those changes?" Nathan considered the question carefully. "Awestruck," he said finally. "A year ago, I was a lonely gardener who thought I'd never be worthy of true love. Today, I have a wonderful fiancé, a baby on the way, and a thriving business." "You are worthy of all that and much more," said Sophia firmly. "Sometimes I'm still afraid I'll wake up and find it was all a dream," admitted Nathan. Sophia took his hand and placed it on her belly. "Feel that?" she asked when the baby kicked. "This is real. I am real. Our love is real. Our family is real." The baby's movement brought tears to Nathan's eyes. "Our son," he murmured with reverence. "Our son," repeated Sophia. "Who will grow up knowing he was loved even before he was born?" "Sophia," said Nathan softly, "there's something I want to ask you." What? When do you want to get married? Sophia smiled in the dark. I was waiting for you to ask that, she said. How about after the baby is born, when we're settled as a family? Perfect, agreed Nathan. I want our son to be present at our wedding. It will be the most beautiful ceremony in the world, said Sophia dreamily. They stayed in the garden for another hour, making plans for the wedding and for life as a family. When they finally returned home, both felt at peace and ready for whatever the future might bring. 3 days later, at 5 in the morning, Sophia woke Nathan with regular contractions. I think the time has come, she said calmly. Nathan jumped out of bed immediately, his nerves taking over. What do I do? What do we need to bring? Are you okay? Does it hurt a lot? He fired off a series of questions as he ran around the room. Sophia laughed despite the pain. Breathe, Nathan, she said. The hospital bag is already packed. You just need to call Dr. Michael and help me get to the car. The drive to the hospital was a mix of nervousness, excitement, and moments of pure comedy when Nathan forgot where he had parked the car due to his nerves. Nathan, said Sophia, during a particularly strong contraction, you need to calm down. I'm going to need you to be strong for me during the delivery. Sophia's words had the desired effect. Nathan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. You're right, he said, taking her hand. I promise to be the rock you need. When they arrived at the hospital, Dr. Michael was already waiting with Dr. Jennifer. How's our mom doing? Asked Dr. Jennifer with a reassuring smile. Anxious to meet my baby, replied Sophia. The labor lasted 8 hours, during which Nathan never left Sophia's side for a minute. He held her hand, wiped her sweat, whispered words of encouragement, and was exactly the support she needed. One last push, Sophia, encouraged Dr. Jennifer. The baby is almost here. With one last heroic effort, Sophia gave birth to a perfect, healthy baby girl. It's a girl, announced Dr. Jennifer joyfully. The baby's strong, healthy cry filled the room, and Nathan began to cry with emotion. Rose Hope Hayes Bennett, he said with a choked voice, looking at the little girl who had just arrived in the world. When Dr. Jennifer placed Rose in Sophia's arms, it was a moment of pure magic. The girl had dark hair and big eyes that seemed to look directly into her mother's soul. Hi, Rose, whispered Sophia with tears of happiness. Mommy and Daddy love you so much. Nathan knelt beside the bed, contemplating his family with a mixture of awe and unconditional love. She's perfect, he said with reverence. She's ours, replied Sophia, carefully passing the baby into Nathan's arms. The moment Nathan held Rose for the first time, something magical happened. All his insecurities, all his fears, all his doubts about being a good father simply disappeared. He knew with absolute certainty that he would give his life for that tiny creature in his arms. Rose, he whispered, his voice full of emotion. Daddy promises you will always have love, protection, and every opportunity you deserve in life. The baby seemed to recognize his voice and stopped crying, looking directly at him with curious eyes. I think she already knows your voice, commented Dr. Jennifer with a smile. Did you talk to her throughout the pregnancy? Every night, answered Nathan, without taking his eyes off Rose. I would tell her about the plants in the garden, about what life would be like when she was born, about how much we loved her. And apparently she was listening, said Dr. Michael, who had entered the room to meet his niece. Look how calm she is in her daddy's arms. Patricia and Richard arrived at the hospital 2 hours later, bringing flowers from the garden and hearts full of love for their first grandchild. Where is my granddaughter? Asked Patricia as soon as she entered the room. Nathan was sitting beside Sophia's bed, holding Rose, who slept peacefully in his arms. Here she is, he said proudly, showing the baby to her grandparents. Richard approached with tears in his eyes. She's beautiful, he said with an emotional voice. She has Sophia's eyes from when she was a baby. Patricia carefully sat on the bed next to her daughter. How are you feeling, dear? She asked. Complete, answered Sophia simply. For the first time in my life, I feel truly complete. And you, Nathan? Asked Richard. How is the new dad? Nathan looked at Rose in his arms, then at Sophia, then at Richard. Grateful, he said sincerely. more grateful than words can express. Mrs. Francis arrived shortly after, carrying a small blanket she had knitted especially for the baby. "Where is the little princess?" she asked excitedly. "Here, Mrs. Francis," said Nathan, standing up to show Rose. "What a beauty!" exclaimed the housekeeper. "She has her mother's delicacy and her father's strength." "What do you mean, her father's strength?" asked Nathan curiously. "In her hands," explained Mrs. Francis wisely. "See how firmly she holds your finger. This girl will be as determined as her father and as affectionate as her mother." Mrs. Margaret was one of the last to arrive, but she brought a special gift, a small potted rose bush she had cultivated especially for Rose. "It's the same variety as the rose you gave Sophia on the day of the cancelled wedding," she explained to Nathan. "I thought it would be appropriate." "Mrs. Margaret," said Nathan, moved, "that's perfect. We'll plant it in the garden at home so Rose can grow up alongside her rose bush." "Exactly," agreed Mrs. Margaret. "And when she's older, you can teach her about plants, like your father taught you." The mention of Nathan's father brought tears to his eyes. "He would be very proud," said Dr. Michael, noticing his brother's emotion. "He would," agreed Nathan. "He always said a man's greatest wealth was his family." As the day went on and Rose grew accustomed to life outside the womb, it became increasingly clear that she had been born into a family full of love and dedication. "You know what amazes me the most?" Sophia said to Nathan when they were finally alone with Rose. "What?" "How you instantly transformed into a father," she explained. "It's as if you always knew exactly what to do." "It's instinct," said Nathan, carefully adjusting Rose's little blanket. "When you love someone unconditionally, you just know how to care for them." "And that's how I knew you would be a wonderful father," said Sophia, "because I saw how you care for the plants, how you dedicate yourself to everything you love." Rose woke up and began to whimper softly. "She must be hungry," said Nathan, carefully passing her to Sophia. While Sophia was breastfeeding Rose, Nathan watched with admiration at the scene of pure maternal tenderness. "Sophia," he said softly, "thank you." "For what?" "For giving me the family I always dreamed of, but never thought I deserved," he explained. "For transforming my life in ways I never imagined were possible." "You transformed mine too," Sophia replied. "You taught me that true love has nothing to do with social conventions or expectations. It's about finding someone who loves you exactly as you are." Rose finished feeding, and Nathan picked her up to burp her. "Rose," he said softly to his daughter, "you are going to grow up in a family that loves you more than anything in the world, and when you grow up you will understand that true love always wins, no matter what obstacles appear in the way." Sophia watched Nathan interact with Rose and felt her heart overflowing with happiness. "When do you want to set our wedding date?" she asked suddenly. Nathan smiled. "How about in 6 months," he suggested, "when Rose is a little bigger, but still small enough to be our flower girl?" "Perfect," agreed Sophia. "And this time, the groom won't run away." "This groom will never run," Nathan promised solemnly. "This family is everything I ever wanted in life." End of story. Dear listeners, what an emotional story we have just shared. Sophia found in the gardener Nathan not only a true love but a partner who loved her unconditionally, took her daughter as his own, and built with her an empire based on love and social responsibility. Now we want to know, what did you think of this story of overcoming and true love? Do you believe Sophia made the right decision in choosing Nathan instead of giving Brandon a second chance? Leave your honest opinions in the comments about this love journey that blossomed in the most difficult moments. And don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories like this one.